there are a lot more folks that have been convicted that aren't in prison, that are serving their sentence, than there are in prison. The parole board is responsible for both parolees, whether they get out on parole, whether their supervision, and also probation. And Judge Pulliam has that tough decision. I used to have that tough decision. Do you give somebody a sentence? Do you put them on probation? Do you give them a split with probation? If they come out for parole, do you write a letter opposing it? And I wrote some of those for bad folks, and I didn't write it one some, and I wrote some saying, you know, they probably should have been out last year. But Darrell Morgan, I've known Darrell since '98 when he went to work in Birmingham as a probation officer and later served as a parole officer in Birmingham, dealing with folks that were out. And one of the real problems that we have is that sometimes they don't function the way we hope they do, the way the probation or parole officer hopes they do, and they have to cause a warrant or writ to be issued, and they have to be sent to prison or sent back or at least incarcerated. But Darrell has worked throughout the system of the parallel system, the parole system. And now we have some 60,000, I think, on probation or parole. So the 30,000 or so we have in prison is half as many as we don't have in prison. And we don't really need to lock up 90,000. But I've asked Darrell to come and to give the perspective of how he is, how his agency deals with the problem, but also how they have contributed to the problem, or not. Darrell? And Darrell is the Assistant Executive Director of the Parole Board.
It's an honor, Judge. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk in front of such a distinguished group, and especially be a part of such a distinguished panel. I'm not going to take responsibility, if I can, for the reason the prisons are overcrowded. But I do know that all components do play a factor in the situation that we're in today. It's great that we have the panel that we have, because they're addressing a lot of issues in addition to what the issues that we're facing about how we got to where we are. It's like Bennett was talking about, this is not something that occurred overnight. This has been a slow-moving train for the past few decades. And we've been standing on the tracks watching the light come, just never got out of the way, and I think it's about to run over us. From my perspective, and this is a great, like I said, this is a great opportunity with everybody else here that can talk about other issues like the Habitual Offender Act and various other things. My perspective from the parole board's part and the probation side, we do both. Alabama is one of the states that the probation and parole are a separate entity, and they do both probation and parole. Alabama has never really focused or put the resources into play outside of the prison walls. There isn't enough programming outside of the prison to adequately take care of the people that are marginal, that could go either way, that could be rehabilitated and could stay out of prison. We don't fund programs to the extent that's needed, especially in rural areas. There's just not any programming out there for small counties and counties that don't have large populations. They don't have any place to send people. And that puts a justice in a situation where they don't have any options to deal with the person that's in front of them. I've stood in courtrooms where I've heard judges talk to pregnant females that are in an active addiction and said, I've got no place to put you. I want to make sure that your baby is born you know, possibly without being addicted, but you keep running off from your treatment facilities, or there's no treatment facility that'll take you, or there's not any beds, so I'm gonna send you to prison so you can have your baby. I've seen justices dealing with people with mental issues or serious mental issues send people to prison because of the fact that there's no place that would take them. They weren't taking their medication. They were homeless. They were running the streets, and the only option was for them to get the medicine or get back on their medication or be in a place that they wasn't more of a nuisance to the society. Is they've sent them to prison. I think prison is supposed to be for punitive reasons. I believe if you can't function in society and you can't conform to society's rules, and you victimize people that do abide by the law, there should be a place for you. But I don't believe that you should send people to prison simply to get drug treatment because there's no other options. I don't know that you should send people to prison simply to get mental health treatment because there's no other options. I think that the prisons should provide these services to the best of their ability, but I know that the prison system in Alabama is pretty much just having to keep up with bed space. I mean, they're trying to house people, and much less do all this programming. That really is one of the contributing factors in my mind that has got us to, or at least added a lot to where we are now. We don't have any stepping stones to the penitentiary. We go straight from being in the community on probation or parole or community corrections to the penitentiary. There are no inpatient rehabilitation places. There's no mental health facilities to the extent that's needed for all these people out in the community that could benefit from them and maybe keep them out of the prison. There needs to be that barrier. There needs to be options out there for people to give them an opportunity to turn their lives around, to get the help they need, to become a productive member of society, to contribute to society. And we need that space in the penitentiary for the most violent, the most heinous that we have. There are a lot of people that deserve to be in prison. And there are a lot of people that should be in prison and that should never get out. But there are some people in prison that could be helped on the outside and would get better treatment on the outside if we would put forth the funding and put forth the programs that are needed on the outside to give judges an opportunity to give these people a chance to avoid the prison doors. I was excited that in the Justice Reinvestment Bill that I do see that there might be, if it does pass, funding for our agency to do programming, to do some programming, and we're going to try to target a lot of the rural areas, a lot of the areas that don't have the resources. That's where we're going to try to do some of the stuff. You know, it's kind of a contradiction of terms. We've got a bill for justice reinvestment going through the legislator on one side about adding all these extra programs and adding all this extra funding and doing all these great things, and then on the other side we got a budget that is going to cut us 18%. And if the parole board gets cut 18%, justice reinvestment is not going to happen in the state of Alabama. There's just not going to be anything. We won't be able to do anything. We won't be paroling. We won't be programming. We have one, Alabama, when the money was good in 2006, Alabama, the parole board opened up a reentry facility in Thomasville, Alabama. It's a residential facility and had some great success with it. I mean, we've got an 11% recidivism rate on that facility, those that completed successfully. And that's the model. That's the model that we wanted to duplicate throughout the state. But as soon as we got it up and running, the next thing I know, we're going to start talking about cuts. And we've lost 40%, since 2009. And we can't operate that way. All we're doing is just supervising offenders and trying to make sure that they don't catch new offenses. I was going to try to keep my time, and I didn't even start my stopwatch. But anyway, with that being said, like I said, I believe that if we try to, if we're able to do some investment on the outside, I think that will go a long way to preventing what's going on in the inside. And I believe that will be the lack of the reasons that we didn't do that up until this point is part of the reason that we're at where we're at today. So I thank y'all, and I appreciate the opportunity.